Hello and welcome to Premier Unbelievable. I'm your stand-in host today, Sam McKee, and we are here at Aylesbury High School in Aylesbury in South Buckinghamshire, a wonderful school. Thank you so much for having us today. And we're discussing the question of ultimate meaning and whether or not you need religion or God to have ultimate meaning in life. I'm joined by two wonderful guests today. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves. So tell me who you are, what you do and where you're from.
Okay, I'm John Richards. I'm the president of Atheism UK, which is a national organisation, as you might expect, with the name UK added to it. And that's about it, really. I mean, this is my job.
Yeah, you've done a couple of Unbelievables now, haven't you?
Yes, I have. Yes, I'm almost a regular.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you back. And to my left, introduce yourself. Who are you? Where are you from?
I'm Caleb Woodbridge, and I'm a freelance writer and editor and cultural apologist. So I like exploring how story and imagination involve themes of faith and philosophy and what that tells us and how we can have good conversations launching off of those.
Excellent. So we have our theist and we have our atheist. You can tell Caleb is from the humanities because of the beard and hat. So we're going to be bringing a mixture of apologetics and anti-apologetics today. The big question on the table today for us, for audience and participants, do we need God for ultimate meaning? We're going to get the positive and the negative here, and then we're going to take some questions from our students. So Caleb, I want to start with you. Why do you think we need God for ultimate meaning in life?
Yeah, so meaning is obviously something we all need to live by. We all need some story to make sense of life. 1400 years ago, when Christianity was brought to the court of King Edwin, I think it was, he asked his advisors what they thought of this new message of Christianity that was being brought. And one of them said that human life is like a sparrow that flies in from the dark into a lit hall and then flies out again. We have this mystery. What happens before? What happens after? Is there meaning? Is there purpose? And of course, we all feel a sense of meaning in terms of relationships, in terms of goals we might have, in terms of aspiration. But is it a pointer to something bigger? Is there some universal meaning, some big story that's big enough to bind us all together, to give us a common meaning, and one that lasts, one that isn't just local and temporary, a matter of preference, but that is universal and can last beyond perhaps even our own death? And so I think for this kind of big meaning, this ultimate meaning, we need a meaning giver. And we need someone to step in from outside the hall who can tell us that meaning. And that's what I believe God offers us. And particularly as a Christian, I believe that in Jesus Christ, God has stepped into the hall to shine that light, to tell us that larger story, that larger meaning.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Over to you, John. The question of ultimate meaning. What's your answer? Do we need God at all for ultimate meaning in life?
That question includes some assumptions. First of all, it includes the assumption that there is a God. And then the next question that pops up, of course, is which God? So for the purpose of this show, I'm supposed to ignore the fact that it could be Unkulunkalu, or Thor, or Anubis, or Ganesha, or any one of thousands of gods that have been invented since mankind walked on this earth. So that's the first assumption that I have to go along with in order to address this question. And then the next thing is, what do we mean by meaning? Because if we're going to discuss this, we need to agree definitions, don't we? So I'd like to ask Caleb, what does meaning mean?
Straight back over to you, Caleb.
Oh, that's a really good good question. Yeah, the meaning of meaning. So, in terms of meaning, I'd say that's tied up with purpose and value, and so that does suggest intention and intentionality, and it suggests someone doing the valuing. Now, as human beings, often we value things and we have intentions for things. But the question is there an intender? Is there a valuer who gives us meaning beyond that which we give ourselves? So I think, is it just all down to us to put meaning onto reality, or is there a meaning that's woven into reality, that's part of the fabric, put there by someone from outside the story?
You used earlier as well the phrase overarching grand narrative, like the story by which humans live their lives. Does that suit you as a definition that we can move forward with?
Well, the dictionary, it says that...
Why didn't we just start with that?
It says that meaning is to have an important or worthwhile quality. Now, I would contend, like Caleb, that we assign value or purpose or meaning to things that we consider to be important or have worthwhile qualities. And therefore, until we have evidence that there is anyone else who might be doing that, it's us. We are the people who make the judgments. And then the next question is, what does the word ultimate connote in this particular phrase? And is it appropriate to juxtapose ultimate with meaning? Well, again, the dictionary would say that ultimate means to be the final or most extreme of its type. So I would contend that we can't know what an ultimate, final, or most extreme meaning might be until the end of time. So I think that the actual phrase doesn't make a lot of sense. But I wonder if Caleb could give me an example of a little bit of meaning. What is meaningful to you, Caleb?
Yeah, let me come to that. I think just the question that raises for me, and I'll get back to your question for me in a moment, is how do you adjudicate between competing human values and meanings? Because part of the problem we have is that we have radically different values, and particularly as you look across human history and human culture, who's to say that a society that doesn't value human life, that sees some people as worthy of being enslaved, who's to say that that meaning is less valid than another meaning? By what standard do you say that some meanings are better than others? Because people come up with all sorts of different value systems, and many of them are ones that we would find we would have common ground in finding as reprehensible. So I think, there's lots of things I find meaningful: a good story, time with my children, but I think we're not. We all agree that there is small meaning, but I think the question is, does that point us to something bigger? Because when I'm out enjoying the beauty of nature, I find that meaning deepened by understanding that as the gift given by a good creator. When I experience the joy of reading to my children, it puts me in mind of God as a good father, as he's revealed in the Christian belief. And so I wouldn't see our local meanings as competing, but as being signposts to bigger meanings. They are participating in a greater meaning. So you can still enjoy those on a local level, but I just say, if you do enjoy those meanings, perhaps they're clues to something bigger.
What do you think to that, John? Can you add up lots and lots of meaningful experiences and that equate to an ultimate meaning, or as good as?
Well, Caleb's right in that we all have our own special meanings, and there's lots of different ones. But it's still, without any evidence for a meaning giver, it's still us that's got to make these judgments. And therefore, we've got to decide what criteria we are going to use to evaluate what is meaningful and what isn't. And I would contend that nothing has value unless somebody wants it. So we all have our own peculiar desires. I mean, if I was a fisherman, it would probably give me a lot of meaning if I caught the world's biggest fish. And if I was a musician or a singer-songwriter, I might find a lot of meaning in getting 1 million downloads. Or if I was a gardener, it might be growing the biggest marrow. There's lots of individual meanings. They're subjective. There's no evidence for any particular universal raining of meaning from the sky.
Can I ask you about that, though? Because obviously, as the president of Atheism UK, I'm sure you subscribe to like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the various things that humanists have. So absolutely you can, we've been talking about a lot of leisure and family, things like that. But what about, do you not believe in absolute human values, sort of when we decry things like slavery? If we're talking much bigger, let's move from the small leisurely things to much bigger. You'd say slavery is wrong and humans have a value. That would you say that's subjective as well?
That's a good question. So I would say that, yes, of course, I subscribe to the human rights and equal rights and all those things, but the key word there is human. We've decided them. There was no message like golden rain coming through the sky. And why do we decide them? It's because we are animals. More than that, we are mammals. More than that, we are social mammals whose babies are born helpless and need nurturing. And so that's where we've evolved to have these attitudes of caring and being able to put ourselves in others' shoes, empathy. And that is why we think it's wrong to do slavery or any of the other atrocities that we read about too often, unfortunately. But I also had a debate on a similar subject as this, a few years ago at the University of Manchester. And my opponent on that occasion was a Muslim lecturer. And he also asserted that this was a question of value. And I think his view, maybe Caleb's view, maybe some of our audience's view, is that value is somehow intrinsic. It belongs to an item. I don't think that. He actually stood up and he held up a ballpoint pen and he asked, this was in a lecture theatre, tiers of students, quite a lot of people, all almost entirely from the Islam faith. And he held up this pen and he said, which do you think is more valuable, me or this? And of course they all thought he was more valuable. But I suspect that if the audience had been Christians, they might have come up with a different viewpoint. At least they might have thought he was marginally more valuable than the pen, but not as valuable as a Christian. I don't know, but these are the different viewpoints that different religions can force people to hold.
Well, obviously we're dealing with the Christian God here, and I presume that you do see that animal rights and human rights may not be the same. But there's plenty there to respond to, so I'll let you take it where you like.
Yeah, certainly I think from a Christian point of view, I'd see every human being as having inherent dignity and worth, whether Christian or Muslim or atheist or whatever. So there's no greater value to a Christian. It's just by grace in terms of God's rescuing people and responding to that. There's no extra value there. But also importantly, I think this is really important to press into because it's far from universal in human culture and history to value the lives of the weak and vulnerable. So it was commonplace in Roman society, for example, to expose infants who were unwanted. So if nobody wanted them, if nobody valued them, on what basis is that is that wrong? That's just humans choosing to value something different. And it happens that because of Christian influence, Christian values on Western society, that we've had this revolution where we believing in a God who died on a cross as someone who was weak and marginalised, we've come to value the poor, the victims, the powerless. But that's quite counterintuitive in many ways, particularly from a sort of survival of the fittest type way. So why couldn't you equally validly, on atheist principles, say we're not going to value the weak, we're just going to look after the strong, those who can contribute most to the survival of the species, and let's eliminate the excess population.
I just we're in an era of activism, a lot of activism right now. I know Andy Bannister on the show has used the example of the student who goes to Antarctica to give their life nobly to protect the wildlife there from destruction because of human industry. And then the capitalist student who enthusiastically goes to Antarctica to club seals to turn them into jackets and handbags and things like that. And they're both living out their meaning and living their lives for what they believe is the right course for them. Why, Caleb, and I will ask you this as well, sure. Why is one maybe more noble than the other, to put it mildly? Yeah,
so I think from a Christian perspective, animal life does have value too, and so we're called to be good, responsible things. It's not to put it on the same level as human life, but there is still a humane treatment and response there. So I think you do get a hierarchy of values where you can say these things are important, but if it came to the choice between saving the life of a seal and the life of a human, I'd choose the human, and I don't think that's speciesist. I think that reflects some objective value rather than a mere prejudice or subjective preference.
But what John has been pressing at, and I just want to push you a little further on this, is you do think these values come from somewhere and that they are real, that they're not just human decisions. And Christians and all religious people have changed their minds on lots of things over history. So where does that come from, and how do you know it's real?
Yeah, so C.S. Lewis talked about it as the Tao in terms of an objective moral order, which most societies and cultures have recognised this idea that morality is something that there is some appeal there, some fundamental reality there, and Christians see that as grounded in God, in His character and nature. Now, of course, for any matter of significance, there will be differences of opinion, and there will be working out the implications of different things. So, for example, with slavery, it sadly took quite a long time for the logic of humans being made in the image of God to be worked out to the extent that Christians abolished slavery. But they did get there, and the basis for that is in Scripture, and that's happened more than once in history. It happened in the Middle Ages within Europe, as well as then with the transatlantic trade later. So there are, it's still humans are still fallible, but I believe that we are orientating ourselves to something that is objective. We do so imperfectly, we get it wrong, we need to learn and correct and recalibrate towards that. But we're not just evolving blindly just according to blind processes. We're aligning ourselves to a fundamental aspect of reality.
Well, let me just push a little more, if you don't mind, because Christians have used the Bible to justify all kinds of stuff in history. And if it is objective and it's real, and you presumably believe in a God who does speak and is involved in the universe, why is it not more clear?
Good question.
So I think partly that's human fallibility, and that God has to work within the cultures and contexts that he's speaking to gradually and progressively help train certain ideas into human thinking. So it's an unfolding story, the story of Scripture. You see the progression from, like, there's the very famous story of Abraham being asked to sacrifice Isaac, which seems morally shocking. But I think the point of that is God is showing Abraham that actually human sacrifice isn't what he wants. It's an object lesson, and by faith Abraham is willing to obey, but then God steps in to stop him. And it's pointing forward to Jesus being the sacrifice and God saying, no, don't do it like that. I will bear the cost for that. And that and the idea of sacrifice, of human sacrifice, animal sacrifice, was a very widespread one across many religions. In some of them it's still significant today. But it's God over the narrative of the Bible in a embodied way is bringing humanity to understand something at a deeper level than a mere thou shalt not wouldn't bed in, wouldn't communicate in the same way.
We are launching a brand new course which helps us to consider the evidence and questions around the birth of Jesus. It's called Did It Really Happen? The Birth of Jesus. Why not sign up for the course or gift it to a friend? Find out more at premierunbelievable.com.
Thank you. I'm sure we're going to get lots of questions on this later on. But before we go to questions, John, time to press you on a couple of things that have come up.
Can I respond to some of
Yes, why don't you do that
just
first?
I would question that the Bible is a source of abolition of slavery. In fact, it depends which part you read, because God will advise you how to beat your slaves, to not quite kill them. And I'd also question whether we shouldn't be appalled at the atrocity of God drowning the entire population apart from Noah's family.
Oh, we can save that for the Old Testament and slavery debates, I'm sure you'd love to do. But...
Okay. So I want to ask our audience a question. So imagine, you know puppies, don't you? Lovely, furry, big eyes, little paws, cute. Some of them are so small you can hold them in your hand or a teacup. I can see you reacting, and I'm only telling you about them. So imagine I've got one here, and I'm revealing it to you, and I want you to react. Let me hear what you've got to say, or what noise you're going to make when I reveal this gorgeous little tiny micro puppy. Here we go. Thank you. That's compassion. And we're evolved to do that. Hands up if you've got a pet. Yes? 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 Do you feel empathy? Do you feel compassion for your pet? If it gets hurt, do you feel sorry for it? We're evolved to behave nicely towards not only members of our own species, but other species, especially furry or feathery ones that we feel akin to. That's how we get our meaning. It's not dropping out of a celestial toilet onto our heads. And I remember my first wife, she's dead now, sadly, cancer, when she was in her middle ages. But I remember her saying, after the birth of our second son, that she now knew why she had been put on this planet. That was her meaning, her purpose. And of course we know that that was a hormone rush, that it was a physiological experience, that it didn't prove that there is a God up there dispensing down on us. It was nature. That's where it all comes from.
Well, in that we've got a few minutes before questions, and there's a couple of things you've mentioned there that tie into what Caleb said, and I want to push on, because we brought this to animals several times. Before we get back to religion, I want to press on the animals thing.
Yes.
I don't think you believe that animal rights and human rights are exactly the same. So how do you distinguish between the two, given everything we've said about evolution, given what we said about how we structure society and find meaning? Just want to ask you about that. How do you distinguish between the two?
That's a thorny issue. But I'm I'm a Homo sapiens activist. I think I ought to be loyal to my species and consider us to be more worthy than others. However, we don't want to be cruel to other species. And in fact, there's a debate going on right now about how we should use different species as specimens in the testing of medicines. That's currently happening. I'm sure you'll know about that in your field. Yeah. And we are, our culture is evolving. If you read, what was it? I'm trying to think of the name of the book. The something of now. Help me.
I've not read it. I don't know.
No. Well, this is by Steven Pinker.
Oh, right.
Enlightenment
Now.
Thank you. Enlightenment Now. Thank you very much. Yes. We have been improving. We have been getting more and more civilized as we've become better educated and know things that we didn't know before, like lobsters feel pain and you shouldn't drop them in boiling water alive. That's us, getting better at being us.
But the thing I want to clarify here is, just to answer the first question, you're using words like shouldn't, like better, like more civilized, as if there is a standard that we know where there's a hierarchy of better values, and that's just what I'm asking. Is what is the standard, what are the values, where are you getting that from?
Yeah. Sam, that's another one of your good questions.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah, you can't get an is from an ought, can you? But I think that this is a matter of feeling. And although we can't define these sorts of values, I think we can put them in an order of progression. It's like intelligence. Nobody can explain precisely or accurately what intelligence is. But I was a teacher. I met the entire range of human intelligence. So I'm experienced at the extremes and the middle, and so I'm pretty convinced that even though I can't define it, I can assess somebody from my experience on a scale of where they might be intellectually.
Well, some people are very late bloomers. Do you then say that humanity as a whole is perhaps a late bloomer when it comes to morality and goodness and those sorts of things?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I want to make sure we've got plenty of time for questions, but I want to put a question to both of you if we can be concise on this. Okay. People, when their lives really crumble and everything falls through the floor, you do get people turning to religion and finding something in that they haven't found before. So to both of you, is that illusion, is that true, and why? See if you can give a minute or two. I'll start with you, Caleb.
Yeah, so it is important that we make sure it's not just wishful thinking. You can't just believe any story. But I think this is one of the clues to there being a real standard of good and evil. We intuitively feel that. You say you can sort of detect intelligence. There's something there that you're responding to. It's not just a subjective thing. There's something that you are recognizing. And so when we recognize right and wrong, good and evil, then that is something that is pointing to something there in reality. Atheism has to say, oh, that's just part of nature, we've evolved. But we have evolved both to empathise and to compete. We have selfish instincts as well as altruistic ones. By what standard do we judge the altruistic, empathetic ones to be the good ones and the selfish, violent ones to be the evil ones? And I think we can tell the difference, but that's a signpost to God as the creator, as the lawgiver, as the one whose love sets the template for us as human beings. To love is the sum of the law, Jesus said. And so that's where I believe it points. And that's why when someone turns to the Christian faith, it's making contact with something real that gives comfort, yes, but it gives comfort because it's making contact with reality.
Thank you, Caleb. John, in 1 minute, why isn't it an illusion rather than real?
We all continuously grow up. It takes a lifetime to come to our senses. And the same is true of our culture. We are all continuously improving, becoming better at our relationships and at our judgments of what's helpful for our species and what's a hindrance. Does that go somewhere towards?
Yes, that's good. Thank you. Let's all give a round of applause to our guests today, and then we look forward to your questions. Okay, we've had a fantastic question for you, Caleb, here. Associating your explanation of Scripture as God's revelation, given that God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-wise, and all those things, why has it not come through so clearly for us in today's culture, and so much is left to interpretation? Couldn't God have done a better job of that?
Yeah, so I think an important part of that is that God wants meaningful relationship with us. So both as individuals and as cultures, we have the freedom to respond, to move towards or away from God. And so part of that is there's our human free will in that. But yeah, I think in terms of clarity, Philip Pullman once said that thou shalt not are soon forgotten, but once upon a times live forever. And I think that the story of the gospel of Jesus dying and rising so that we can be forgiven, that's proved an incredibly powerful story for spreading across the, cultures and across the world to bring moral revolution across society, so across many different societies. So I think, yeah, I'd point to God working with our human nature, working with our free will to use a way that will speak to us at the deepest levels as some of the reasons for that. But yeah, it's a really good question.
Excellent, thank you. We've had an excellent question here. Is it possible that two things can be true at once here? We've argued for God and for nature, and some of the things that have come up do seem to bump into each other, and yet you both seem to accept that meaning can come out of these things. So how do you hold those two things in tension? John, I'll start with you.
Are we going into non-overlapping magisteria here?
You can be, if that's the way you want to go.
Well, some people seem to have different compartments in their brains, so that when they, say a scientist, so that when he leaves the laboratory, he switches off his scientific, logical mind, and when he goes into the church, He switches on his believer's mind, and that's how he gets over the problem you suggest. And earlier, Caleb said about how a religious belief can be a comfort. Or was it you, Sam? You said that you asked the question of whether it can be helpful to people who are undergoing difficult times.
Yes.
And yes, but so can a teddy bear. You know? So I'm not against people finding comfort. I just don't want them to be deluded.
Excellent. Caleb, what's your response?
So yes, it's definitely both. And what I've been wanting to say is that the natural side points to the God-given side. That it's both at once. But I think what we experience on the natural level points us as a signpost upwards to there being something bigger and deeper that's an underlying foundation for it all.
Excellent question for you, Caleb. You've said that God is a giver of meaning. Does it have to be God? Why can't it be another person or a higher power?
Yeah, so I think it has to be God to give universal and eternal meaning, so overarching meaning. It depends what you mean by higher being. I think God fits within the category of higher being, and you could expand that philosophically, and we could look at, could it be some kind of impersonal thing, or could it be something else? There are some other options there other than just Christianity versus atheism. But I think it does boil down to for it to be something that is for everyone, everywhere, for all time. That has to come from, it has to be something personal for it to be intentional, and it has to be eternal for it to have that universal value, to give that universal thing. Other people can give local, temporary meanings. Only God can give that universal, eternal meaning.
Excellent question. Thank you. You want a quick comment on that?
I want to follow up on that, yes, because Caleb's just made a number of claims there. So were you wondering, for example, whether the person who could authorize whatever it is you're seeking to have a foundational view of, could it be possibly the Pope of atheism? So the point here is that if there's nobody up there, the only things that can give opinions are people, right? And we notice that this manifests itself within religions too, because since they can't actually communicate and get, a text message from heaven, we have to have earthly agents who claim to represent him and who have a hierarchy. And there is a pope, who is the boss man. And subsequent lower individuals who have little bits of authority underneath this structure. It's so human. It's obvious. I mean, all organizations are built like that, whether it's the military, the government, businesses, schools. There's a headmistress here. Is it a headmistress or a headmaster? Thank you. Yeah. So there you go. I mean, this is what humans do. We are tribal animals. We need a leader. And that leader is the authority.
What about the evolutionary role that religion has played in guiding our moral compasses, our views of the world, our whole overarching narrative, as Caleb has called it to? What about that role in?
It is a good question. So do you think that religious evolution has resulted in behaviours like burning Giordano Bruno at the stake for disagreeing with the Pope? Or like imprisoning Galileo in his home because he disagreed with the Pope? Or like rubbishing Darwin, you mentioned evolution, because his views of how the diversity of life came about didn't match what the Bible taught us about creation in 7 days? Is it those aspects of morality that came from religion that you are seeking to have affirmed?
Well, what about the positives as well? You've given some good examples there of the negative, but in terms of your own worldview about
Although all of
human
those
rights,
are more complicated.
It's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag, isn't it? Now, the religious people amongst us here will claim they are responsible and they own and they're proud of all the good things, and they'll not mention the fact that by their reasoning, God created athlete's foot. I mean, why? If we're his chosen species, why would he give us fungi to rot our feet? There's nothing there that's any sense. Sorry, I'm getting quite carried away.
No, it's all right. We've got a full-on pre-Christmas pantomime going on here with good and evil and all those things, or good and evil, depending on which way you see it. Fantastic question. I'll just repeat it back for you here, Caleb. There are thousands of religions, probably more than that even. What gives you the justification for the claim that the Christian God is the right arbiter of meaning over and above all those other views that have existed even long before Christianity came along?
And is it Yahweh or Jesus? Or the Holy Spirit?
Yeah, well, one God, three persons, according to Christian belief. Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think what we see with religion is although there's many religions, when it comes down to it, they fall into a few basic categories. You can have one God, monotheistic religion, and that's a really popular option. You've also got monistic views of the universe, where the universe is one fundamental thing. And you've got sort of polytheistic, where there's different principles at work, and you can have sort of materialist or spiritual monistic ones, where it's everything resolves down to either matter or it's all an illusion, as in some forms of Eastern religion. So you kind of end up with maybe 3 or 4 main buckets that they fall into. And monotheism is a really strong contender, I'd say. And then it's a question of looking at, okay, if there is one God, one creator, one ultimate unmoved mover, as many different religions believe, Christianity and Islam and Judaism and others as well, then has that God spoken? Has that God revealed himself in history? And it opened up a whole other debate to unpack exactly why I find the Christian claim persuasive. But I think you can look at the records, look at the Gospels, apply historical thinking to those. And you can see that from really early on, there was this belief that Jesus had risen from the dead, as secular historians recognise as well as Christians. And so the question is, where did that belief come from? I think it's because it really happened. I think that's worth looking into.
Thank you very much, Caleb. We're out of time, but can we give a big round of applause for our guests and for yourselves? Thank you.